I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on April 17th, 2018. This BP10 edition of Called to Coach is a resource for Gallup-trained BP10 coaches and educators who want to help others identify and develop their entrepreneurial talents. We have Gallup experts and independent BP10 coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies. Today, we have the author of the book, and we'd like to that will help others maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. If you just look down there and log in, bottom left-hand corner, it says log in, choose the guest count, take the guest name out, put your name in. You can ask us questions live. If you have questions after the fact, or you want more information from us, you can send us an email. Just send that to coaching@gallup.com or use the contact form right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit our new BP10 site, by the way, if you haven't been out there yet. Head out to gallup.com/builder. Todd, did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Gallup.com/builder. Good. Available, brand new site. Brand new as of it's April 17th. So maybe you're listening to this in 2012. Head out there head out there to gallup.com/builder. And a lot of the things that we talk about are out there today. You can also catch the video on both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. If you want to listen to this later or listen to all our podcasts, they're available for you on our coaches blog. Head out to coaching.gallup.com. Todd Johnson is our host today. Todd's Gallup's channel leader for entrepreneurship and job creation. Todd, always great to have you back on another special Call to Coach. Welcome.
Welcome. Thanks. It's great to be here. I've noticed that over the years, we kind of trade off on the beard thing, because I think last update I had the beard and it was pure gray. And I just need to mention publicly that yours is graying.
Well, thank you.
It's great to be here.
It is. And good to have you back clean shaven. What do we have today?
Well, I do want to give an extra plug to the website. We're really excited about what we've added. We've got some really great videos coming online. So if you do have a chance, please go to the new website and let us know what you think. So in the United States, around the world, when you meet somebody, it's pretty common to say, hey, what do you do? Right? Or maybe if you're in college, what's your major? Right? Those are just standard questions that humankind seems to focus on. We want to change that. We're going to change the global dialogue. We're going to change the national dialogue. We want people saying, hey, what are you building? What have you built? What are you trying to build? And we really, quite honestly, we're very proud of our brand. We're very proud of our research. We think we can change that dialogue. A really big part of that, I'm going to hold up my book. It's a hard copy, so it's not the advanced reading copy. Born to Build. We're all builders. And you'll notice, in those that have been with us for the years, we're kind of migrating from entrepreneurs to builders. It's easier to spell, and it's much more inclusive because we're all building on life's journey. I really love the subtitle of the book, How to Build a Thriving Startup. So absolutely, we're focused on the startup and the entrepreneurial community, a winning team, new customers. What company, existing, large, small, anywhere in the world is not focused on new customers? They better be. And your best life imaginable. So that's inclusive to literally the 7.8 billion people around the world. We're all builders. And not only have we brought the assessment, BP10, to the conversation of builders, but we've brought a methodology. We brought a rigor to a systematic, scientific process to the art of building, the science of building. And we're really excited about the next 4 webinars. We're going to be discussing the different exercises and activities behind building. It could be building a company. It could be building a nonprofit. It could be building a family and a great life. We're all building, and we've come up with activities and exercises. We're calling them the 4 keys. And this is the first in the series. There will be 4 of these webinars in the coming weeks. And each one, we're going to have Dr. Sangeeta Bottle, the co-author of our very exciting new book. She's co-authoring with our chairman, Jim Clifton, for those of you that haven't seen the book. And she's here with us today. And so please rifle searing questions to the good doctor, really, really hard ones. And she'll answer them, because I've seen her go toe-to-toe with the best researchers in the world. She always wins. Dr. Sangeeta Bottle, you're on. Take us through some of the keys to building and today's activities. And Jim and I will try to participate if we can keep up with your intellect. Dr. Bottle.
Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you for that wonderful introduction to the book, to what we are going to talk about today. And it is such a pleasure to join both of you, as well as everyone out there who's listening to this podcast. Uh, well, when we speak about the process of building, or the action of building, we know that it takes human vision and human action to actually get that rolling. So yes, there are all these contextual factors that play a role in whether a business gets off the ground, whether a business can scale and grow. But ultimately, at the center of this entire activity, there is the human being that is making that happen. So it is the individual who comes up with an idea, gathers the resources, builds the product or service, finds their first customer, um, and then eventually thinks about the scale and the growth of the business. And all these require um, a very high level of input from the individual who is building this business. Um, the that the level of self-awareness about how does the individual think, how does the individual make decisions, what is the failure tolerance of that individual, um, what kind of business the individual builds, should also resonate with who he or she really is, because that then makes that process much easier, full of purpose, pleasant, because it is a long journey full of obstacles and risks, um, and scarcity of resources, etc. So it is good for the person who is at the center of this activity to really understand and be self aware around his or her strengths. That is the first key that we will be talking about today, which then will be followed by the next three steps in that building process. So I'm going to focus on that. What does it take to build that self awareness? And self awareness is like a muscle. You actually have to exercise it, you have to pay attention to it. You need to make sure that you are working on developing that strength, that can then lead to behaviors which influence the outcomes, the business outcomes that the individual is looking for. So, today we will be talking about three different tools that Gallup has come up with to really build that muscle of self awareness, of making sure that the individual understands who she or he is. Um, Jim, at this point, if I can request you to uh, get on the first tool that we have, which we call the self schema tool on the screen, for our listeners and those who are watching us. What this tool is, it's called the self schema tool, which in other words is a blueprint of your personality. So consider this as a map of your personality that you can use to understand your behaviors, and also in terms of understanding the individual's view of the world. This is the lens through which the individual that you're working with as a coach or a teacher is really looking at the world through this particular lens.
Thank you. Can I just add something?
Sure.
Um, I went to Wikipedia and looked up schema because we were with a bunch of high school kids over the weekend, and remember, we were trying to figure out what the word schema meant. As according to Wikipedia, it's a representation of a plan or theory in the form of an outcome or model. And as it relates to psychology and cognitive science, it's patterns of thought and behavior that represent who you are. So I thought that might be helpful to those that are wondering what schema means. Now we know.
Yes, that is a perfect definition, and thank you for bringing that to our listeners. Uh, so, what you see here as the first tool, the first step towards building that self awareness, is an exercise that can help those you coach or those you work with or advise to discover and direct their talents. So when the individual has taken the BP10 and received the developmental report, we know that the report contains the top four talents on the very first page, which are the most dominant talents for that particular individual. So, what we do in the self schema tool is we take the brief descriptions of each talent, and the individual who's working with a coach or an advisor can begin to call out the phrases or the words that resonate the most with him or her, and these are the the uh, pieces of the characteristics of their personality that resonate the most with the individual. So once the person has that, so you can see an example, I think, on the screen where we have the profitability talent definition, a short definition, and the person is picking out the phrases or the words that make sense. So, for instance, making money is the primary objective, or running a tight ship, or keeping a very close check on the costs, the operational costs of the business, or the penchant for numbers, uncanny ability to look at the same data that others have looked at, but come up with unique insights around those numbers. These are some of the defining characteristics of the talent of profitability. So, someone who has high profitability, who has profitability in their top four, can pick out these phrases and then write those down in the column that is on the template called What Resonates with Me. Once they've identified that, on the right side of that column that says My Self Schema. So those are the patterns, as Todd rightly said, patterns of behavior that the individual is likely to exhibit towards that particular talent of profitability. Ask the individual to come up with some examples from his or her life that tie to those phrases or words that made the most sense to them, that resonated the most with them. So, for instance, making money, if that is a phrase that resonates with the individual, then the person can think back in their life and say, I remember the first time I made money. Maybe it was mowing yards of a neighbor. Maybe it was a lemonade stand outside my house. And maybe it was something else. But whatever that behavior was that ties to that particular characteristic of making money is what we would like the individual to note down. What happens is, as you go through this exercise, the key behaviors that are tied to these strengths become more top of mind for the individual. And that leads to that self awareness and strengths awareness that then helps the individual to maximize that talent going forward, which can then affect those outcomes that the person is looking for, whether these are short or long term goals for the individual, whether it is starting a business, whether it is building an app, or whatever other building activity that is going on. So, this is a simple, effective exercise that the person can do for their top four talents. And I think as a coach, it is up to you to decide whether you would like to go through that exercise for more than four talents, and that's fine. Uh, but minimum, I think doing it for the ones that are the most dominant for the individual would really yield good results. So I'm going to stop there. If Todd, you have something to say,
Well, I'll
please.
just chime in a little bit. You know, you and I had the benefit of giving this activity to about 100 high school students just last Saturday, and we didn't really know how it was going to be received, but they loved it. And it's about having a conversation with yourself, and it's about maybe having a conversation with someone else. But I was really very pleasantly surprised on how engaged they were and the examples. And then we went around the room and we had them jump up and give examples. And there's some really both entertaining but very thoughtful descriptions that brought it to life. So we all know, you know, Gallup assessments can't just be answer some questions, get a report, move on with life. It's got to be part of our presence in our existence. And this exercise really seems to make it really seem to sink in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We do have, as part of this exercise or this tool, there are these short definitions of all the 10 talents that are on the back side. So that's for easy reference
Yeah.
of the individual as you are as the individual is either doing it him or herself or is working with a coach or an advisor, so that it's right there for your reference. You can pick and underline and highlight those words, put them in the what resonates with me column, and then try to identify behaviors that are tied to those phrases and words that are resonating with the individual. It's really that simple. I think doing this again and again over extended periods of time really embellishes what each talent means into the person's mind. So this is not, of course, a one-time exercise. I think the individual has to keep going back to it in a way that every time they recognize a new behavior that, or maybe it's not a new behavior, but a behavior that the person now starts noticing that has ties to that particular talent, then jotting that down would really be good. And the whole exercise of actually writing something down really burns that into our conscious piece of our brain. And so getting that up and front and center is what this whole exercise is about, so that the person can start recognizing those behaviors.
If for those of you that have been through any of the Gallup courses, of course, we have you write down your commitment statements on the last day and read them, because there is tremendous research that says your ability to complete or finish something is exponentially higher when you've written it down. So right. I think that's a really neat point.
Yeah.
And these are in writable PDFs in the resource section of the website. And you can print them or use them there in a writable PDF, correct?
That is right.
Cool.
Yeah.
No questions so far, Sangeeta. If you have anything else you want to add, and then we can move on to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we are fine moving on with the next one. Maybe we can have questions as they come along.
Yours.
Okay, the next one is up, 10 Talents of Successful Builders.
Nope.
Sorry, hold on. Keep going.
These are the definitions that are for quick reference for the self-schema tool. So people can look at them and use these as the to highlight and underline.
There are deeper definitions than exist in the BP10 report. The report is much more summary.
Right. The report has these bullet points that are very succinct, and here you have more of a flow of the language and full sentences, which is easier for the person to grasp and to work from. The book, however, will have a much longer definition with examples of some successful builders that exhibit those behaviors and that talent. So if someone wants to go to the book and then read those definitions for a deeper understanding, we also have that. But I think, Jim, we are moving to what is the next tool, which is the board of directors tool.
Correct. I have it up for you.
Awesome. So what you see here is a way of identifying and making full use or leveraging the network that the individual has. We all know that the exercise of building something is extremely involved and resource intensive. The resources do not only have to be the financial pieces that have to be in place, but also in terms of the human or individuals who are who can be trusted, who can be leaned on for help and advice. And the board of directors tool is a way for someone to really take stock of that network and identify people in their lives that could really, really help the individual in the exercise of building and getting to their short or long-term goals. So what you see here is an example of a college senior who has filled in her board of directors tool, and she is really interested in getting into the financial industry. So what we have are about maybe 7 or 10 categories that are different types of roles that people can play in helping an individual build something. The coach, mentor, role model, expert, accountability partner, etc. Now, of course, not each of these roles has to be filled by the individual. You can pick and select what really makes sense to and who really makes sense to be on your board of directors. Uh, but one of the things that there is research that shows it, and our initial work has also shown that just having a list of people that you can turn to when you need advice, when you need help, when you need support is good. That's a great first step. But you really do not get the maximum benefit of those relationships unless you put a process in place. So basically, this exercise or this tool is a way for the individual, the builder, to put a process in place so that each relationship can be maximized to the fullest. So here you see that the student, the college senior whose example is in front of you, has filled in the name of the coach, and there is an identification for how close that relationship is. And the purpose of that is to say whether this is someone who's really a personal friend, a close individual that I trust and have had a lifelong relationship with, or is it someone who's much more formal and distant, which could be a mentor, which could if not a mentor, a role model, for instance, is someone who's distant and formal relationship. You may not have met that role model and do not have a direct interaction with the role model every day. So understanding and really identifying what that closeness level is on a 5-point scale. So 1 being formal and distant, and 5 being close and personal. And then comes the fun part, which is how often do you want to meet this person? So tie this exercise to the short and the long term goals of the individual. So what is the frequency of interaction? Would it be a quarterly meeting? Could it be something that is much more frequent, like maybe in a few weeks, touching base with the individual in a few weeks? So help the builder specify exactly what are some of the what is the frequency of the interaction needed to fulfill the needs that the person has in terms of meeting some goal related to that person. And then what type of support you need. So identifying exactly what this student needs from Sally is something that is really important. Uh, Discussing plans after college, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years, set personal and professional goals. All these are things that the person needs to identify. The more details you can give for each role in terms of the closeness level, the frequency of interaction, and the type of the support needed, the likelihood of being really likelihood of leveraging that relationship to the fullest goes up. So that's what this is about. And I think, again, this is an ongoing exercise for the individual to make sure that he or she is leveraging the relationships that he or she has to the fullest. Let me
I'll
know if
just
you have any
add,
questions. Yeah, go ahead.
as mentioned, we're all builders. You and I and Jim, we're all building something actually here at a 100-year-old polling company. It was really important. This dates all the way back to Don Clifton. Every new associate at Gallup is highly encouraged to build a board of directors. And we even go so far as to pay for the quarterly lunch. So there's a frequency to it. We've been literally coaching executives and builders on this board of directors back into the 1960s. I still have my original board of directors sheet in my desk somewhere, and that's 23 years ago. But it's really important if you're starting up or if you're working within an existing business or wherever you're going. This exercise is applicable. Nobody does it alone. This is a good time to talk about where you can get the book. There are some special bulk book programs we have for coaches out there. Book Pal, which is book-pal.com. Of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. We did send out some emails to both certified strengths coaches as well as Gallup BP10 coaches on different incentives that are running through the month of April. They're seeming to be well received. So the book will release on May 8th of 2018, but it's available in a pre-order, pre-release form as we speak. And again, there's some neat communications that we've had with both BP10 coaches and certified coaches around some incentives to get the book early.
Todd, I've got a question. We can
Yes,
throw in there
Jim.
from Luke out in the chat room. He says only a few of the slots in the board of directors tools specifically reference talents. How should a builder address adding talents to their team for those board members who have minimal contact with them?
Yeah, these are examples. That's a great point, Luke. And what I found with both these exercises and a lot of the different coaching collateral, if you will, individualizing it to what you're comfortable with is a great idea. So, building these out to include the talents maybe of who your advisors are, and then how you'll interact with them based on that is a fabulous idea. We, of course, are somewhat limited by space and time, so we did not build that in, but I think it's a neat idea, Luke.
Sounds good.
And importantly, you all know if you've been around me for a while that I feel very strongly that the experiential mentoring and coaching is wonderful, but if it's not talent based on kind of who you are, how you're wired, it's probably not going to hit the mark. So bringing in that individualized talent piece is a great idea.
Micah asks, hey, Todd, can you talk more about the students you worked with? What did they really love the most?
Yeah. So we gave the assessment to a couple 3,000, predominantly freshmen. Okay. But some upperclassmen, but I'd say 60% were freshmen, which is young. I greeted them all at the door and was reminded how young they were. And it was a beautiful project. Gave the assessment again across thousands, invited 400 to an inspiration rally, kind of rah, you've got big talent. We let the computer help us determine who to invite. That was about a half an hour event where their parents came and we talked about the different programming that we had availed to these students. We invited 200 to come to a 1.5 day long workshop. It was so much fun. The city of Lincoln is buzzing with builder energy. About 100 came, which we think is great. It was a Saturday, 3 hours on Saturday. It was literally 11 hours on Monday. Saturday, we took them through Schema and team building. We helped them build teams. We built 20 teams of 5 builders each. That equals the 100. And they worked on businesses that would make Lincoln a better place. So there's, the Lincoln Vital Signs Report. They worked on really cool business ideas. The business community, mentors, coaches, and entrepreneurs came in the afternoon and helped them prepare a pitch. There was a pitch contest starting at 5:30. A bunch of their parents came in. I'd say 150 parents came in and watched them pitch. And then there were finals where the winner received $1,000. 500 and 250. So there were prize money, and the energy was just awesome. 11 hours is a long day for you and I, Jim, but these high school kids hung in there. They built incredible companies. The sponsor is actually now investing some money in a few of the companies. So they reserve the right to kind of go the next step. And I'm talking to a half dozen cities around the world about their Future Builders Challenge. As we speak, we're of course going to do it in Omaha. We're got some exciting things out in Colorado. I'll be in Baton Rouge on this topic later this week. If in your community you have people that care about the future and want to engage with the next generation of builders, we have a really strong methodology, and the budgets are reasonable to pull this kind of thing off.
Well, next we move on to what we call the My Purpose Journal. This is the third tool in our little toolbox, which is still about building that self-awareness that we were talking about, not only with the self-schema, then also tapping into your networks to make sure that you are living those talents and making full use of them by leveraging people who understand you, who you trust, and who can advise you based on who you are. But then the purpose journal, which is the third one on your screens now, this is the one that brings all this together. So that whole process of self-awareness is brought together by journaling about it. It is the goals the person has, the positive experiences the individual now begins to notice, which are tied to those talents or those strengths, and then interactions with the board members that all come together in this particular journal. We recommend that the person, the builder, at least do this exercise for a minimum of 30 days. Um, and keeping that record allows the individual to see the links between their talents, dominant talents, the behaviors, and then the outcomes that they're expecting from whatever they're building. So this is, consider this like a historical record. So, 5 years, 10 years later, the individual can go back and see what are some of the decisions that he or she made, which ones were successful, which ones he or she needed to pivot away from, which ones were uh, led him or her into different directions, or a new path opened up, etc. So this is like almost like housekeeping, or keeping track of how to use those talents. So you start with the positive experiences the individual has. So this is what is happening during the day to me, and what are these behaviors that I notice that are really driving towards those goals that I have set for myself. What are these plans for the future? What is my short term goal? What is my long term goal? Because unless you really write that down, as Todd had mentioned before, it really doesn't sink in. You don't own that. So making sure that the goals are very clearly specified in your journal, so that you can then start looking at those positive experiences, which are ultimately going to drive behaviors towards those goals, is really important. And then also capture the interactions with the board members, just like the person did on the board of directors tool. So what is the conversation with Sally? When is it happening? What is it about? What is the outcome that you're looking for? And the action items that derive from those conversations and interactions are good to capture, because that gives you um, a line of sight to what I'm already doing, what needs to be done, what are the timelines for doing that. And the more details that you can help the individual with, the higher the likelihood that he or she can actually achieve those short and long-term goals.
And setting goals that are realistic, writing down, start a $10 million company in 2 years. I've always appreciated when the psychologists have taught me that the further your reality is from your expectations, the more clinically depressed you are. So I think setting goals that can be achieved, my CFO's reminded me of this over the years, get to first base and then second base. Everything doesn't have to be a home run. So really being purposeful about those goals, I think, is important for all of our coaches and teachers and parents and mentors out there.
Right. All right. Well, we are open for questions, any feedback, any experience with similar things that we have a really, really strong cohort of extremely talented and experienced coaches. So we would love to hear from you. We would love to answer any questions you may have. So
and that goes for always, not just on these webinars. Everybody probably knows my email and Sangeeta's email, and we love hearing from our coaches. We'll be doing a special, I'm going to give a plug here, Jim, a little solicitous, but a special breakout session at the Strength Summit on how coaches are using Clifton Strengths and BP10 together. So that should be a pretty lively session, because a lot of them are and having some really exciting results.
Sangeeta, Misty in the chat room asks, is there research on how the number of roles filled and proximity affects long-term success?
There is research that has found the number of people is, I think, less important in terms of someone filling every single role that we've identified as important for the individual. So the number makes less impact, but the interaction, the type of closeness, that definitely has an impact on someone's long-term success. So I think closer relationships sometimes can lead to advice and um access to resources for the individual that then helps them get to that goal. But just sticking with the close ones and not looking at the formal or distant ones is also not very smart, because um, your immediate network uh, needs to be pretty diverse. So there should be some that are fine from your immediate network, but then having some that are outside of your network are also important. And I think we'll talk about this a lot more in our last segment, the fourth key, where we talk about that. Um, the necessity to really create diverse networks. So I would say that of the three things that we talked about in the board, the closeness, the frequency of interaction, and the type of support identification, I think closeness probably yields pretty high level of outcome because of the individual's tendency to rely on relationships that are the closest to the person. The frequency interaction is, I think, even more important than closeness, because it specifies an action that has to be taken, something that needs to be documented, something that needs to be thought through, and a, a meeting has to happen, a meeting of the needs of the individual to the person who can fulfill that need has to happen. And so that, in my opinion, is even more important than closeness. And closeness has to be balanced with some people from your immediate network, but then others who are outside of your network, outside of your close relationship, so that you are getting feedbacks and resources that you don't have access to from your immediate network. So frequency of interaction, number one; closeness, number two; and identification of the type of support, probably the same as closeness in terms of importance. I hope that answers that.
Todd, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I thought that was right on.
Okay. Sangeeta, so let's see. Patty asks, with people identifying their talents, what's on here? Oh, that just moved here. What's on here to let the client know to look at the talents they don't have?
So when we are talking about the self schema, you can, as I had said before, extend it to all 10 talents. So people who would like to understand or discuss the talents that they probably do not have in their top four, you can use the same tool to actually look at the areas that are less strong for that individual. And how I would use that at that point would be to identify the pieces that uh, are important for the activity of building, but uh, might not resonate very strongly with the individual. And that allows the person to then see that, profitability is an important thing for my business, but I don't have profitability in my top four, not even in my top half. It's somewhere at the bottom. So then I do need to understand that that's not something I lead with, that doesn't interest me, and maybe find other partners on my team to do that, to fulfill that particular demand of the role. Now, let me give you an example. I was speaking with uh, an entrepreneur, a highly successful entrepreneur who has built his business from scratch to about, I think, 25 or 30 million dollars, lives in New York City. And he was we were discussing his report, and his profitability is towards the bottom. So he has that, I think, as the eighth or the ninth ranked talent. And my question to him was, how much attention do you pay to numbers as you are managing your multiple stores? And he looked at me, and the first thing he said was, well, I look at the numbers every single morning. I do not start my day without looking at these numbers, because numbers are our lifeline. And he, had a good explanation for why numbers are so important. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, you know, his profitability isn't very high, but he obviously is
Accounts for it.
yeah, he's saying that this is an important one for me to look at. So maybe the talent level that is being captured by the assessment is not exactly to where the individual feels his or her profitability talent is. So my question to him was, um, how often do you and how much time do you spend in terms of discussing these figures with your staff, with your immediate team, etc.? And he said, to tell you the truth, I absolutely hate doing this. I mean, I do this every single morning. I have a CFO that is an amazing numbers guy. I trust that individual 100%. I would trust him with my life. I trust him 100% with my business. He's the one who brings these numbers in front of me, and he has trained me well enough where I try to pay attention when he's doing this. And I know how important it is. I know how important it is for me to keep track of the sales, same store sales, the sales of new units that we are starting, our expansion plans, and how much that would take in terms of the resources. I need to know all that. But after about half an hour, I'm done. Even 15 minutes, my eyes glaze over, and he knows not to give me details and only the top line numbers. So really, I don't I wouldn't care at all about, okay, care is the wrong word. He cares about profitability, but he doesn't want to be the one who's keeping track of those numbers. So I think it's important. It was important for him to see his report. This was the first time he had done an assessment like the BP10, where his talents were spread out in front of him, and we were having a conversation about it. So I really like the idea that the person, each individual should look at the talents that are at the bottom too, if for nothing else, to make sure that those are covered by some other team members who you trust and who you look to for advice, for their feedback, and for taking care of that demand of the role.
Like we say in class repeatedly, and everybody that's been through knows what's coming now, you don't have to have all 10, but you have to account for them. And if profitability, it's what's the old expression? It's pretty hard to be a broke do-gooder. I've had to defend that one in nonprofit circles, but anybody on this call that's running a nonprofit knows that the only difference is your relationship with the tax authorities. But having financial vitality and sustainability is as important. Your customer might be a granting entity instead of a credit card, but you need them all. I would only add that as I've done the self-schema with some different people, it's really kind of fun and validating when they're working at the top of their list. They don't have enough space, right? They're just writing and they're seeing it all. They're struggling at the bottom because they don't see it. They don't know how to write a schema because it's not in me. And it is a fun exercise to take some people through all 10, because boy, in the beginning, it's really easy and you're spending all your time, and it's a real process to get through the 9th and 10th. More questions. This is great.
Yeah, let me ask another question related to I'm trying to keep, guys, let's try and keep the questions related to these forms if we can. We're getting off into the missions and purpose and some of those other things. But Sangeeta, as we think about using these forms we've provided, we often say for any builder, either internal or external, right? I'm a builder of a webcast inside of Gallup. I built that from scratch. Can I use these forms that we're going to talk about over the next, the next 4 webcasts? And how would I use them internally? Would it be any different, or would it be the same?
Irrespective of whether someone is building a for-profit business from scratch, a nonprofit, a social enterprise, or an employee who, like you just used your own example of building this entire knowledge base for the company. Irrespective of where it is done and how it is done, I think we definitely can benefit from using these tools to be better builders, to be the strongest builders that each one of us can be in our jobs. Whether that job is inside as an employee or it's outside as building something from scratch. So yes, absolutely, you could use.
And you could take, you said it in the opener, but building a family. I mean, if you really go back and think about these tools on who you are, who you need around you, why is it important, and writing it down and being structured. It all applies to parenthood. I'm building a great life for my new golden retriever, Maggie. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, but I could make these work.
Yes.
Good questions.
Patty's asking a question out there. How important is it to have your network or your mentor and advisors take their BP10 report to know how they can apply their talents to help with building?
It would be excellent to have your mentors and advisors also take it. I think also taking and going through that exercise helps them understand what the assessment is measuring and what it really means. Looking at their own talents might also give them ideas of how to apply that in their own lives. So, absolutely, the more understanding people have, people who are around you have about their talents would also be a definite plus. But if your ask or your interaction with the mentor is around the goals that you've set for yourself, then maybe that might not be their first, uh, something they turn to right away in terms of, let me take the BP10. I think the purpose is to help the individual get to that goal and move towards that as fast and in the best way that the advisor and mentor can help them move. So I would say great to have, but not critical.
Yeah. And I would only add that it's probably more important on the 5s and less importance on the 1s. You know, having Warren Buffett as a role model, I don't think he's been through BP10. I haven't seen him in the database, but he can still be that role model. So, right. But he's, as you note here, he's a 1. So I think you probably flex it with your 4s and 5 versus your 1s and 2s.
Great point.
A couple questions in the chat room around what we're building. In other words, you can come up with great solutions to things that aren't actually a problem, right? And so these tools are not necessarily addressing the what of what you're doing, but more the how, right? Todd,
Nice.
have we, or Sangeeta, have we thought through that? I mean, is there some concern that people would get going on things that are solving problems that aren't really problems?
That's, I think, a topic for a whole nother podcast.
And it might be right, but
philosophical. But I think it's a very individualized question, and your view of what you're doing. Because of the movement around BP10, I mean, I'm seeing and thinking about building and creating economic energy where none existed in a very structured way. But I live this 20 hours a day. Someone else they're building something, but they might not think of it as building. You know, the example I've used is the clerk at the quick shop who's got a little client base that gets their coffee when they see her car. She probably doesn't see herself as a builder, but if you put the context around, creating customer and economic energy where none existed, you can get there pretty quick. Those things have to be built. So much of this just is going to happen. But of course, and this applies to so much of Gallup and behavioral economics, we're trying to add intentionality and objectivity and science to the process. I mean, I feel speech coming on. I don't want to do it. But knowing those 10, the jungle is going to teach you whether you have profitability or selling or determination. The process of building will manifest your relationship with the 10 demands. At the same way it'll manifest if you try to go through life without a board of directors or knowing yourself or being conscious of your purpose. You can get there. It's just not going to be as pretty to watch, and it's going to be more painful, and it's not going to be as impactful. I don't know if I pulled a politician, might have answered a different question, but tried to get.
I think you did address this really, really well. Just a little addition. What we are talking about, the tools today, are really the hows of the building process. So we've kept it intentionally so free of the exact idea of that the individual might have. Now, the subsequent tools that we will discuss in our coming podcasts are going to be very specific to the business idea and how to develop that idea and activate around it. But this one is more about the individual. It's more about gaining that core self-awareness so that the person, when he or she does have an idea, can leverage the pieces that are the strongest for that individual to drive towards those outcomes. So we've purposefully kept the goals separate from that immediate startup or and building of an idea. But we'll get into that.
Good.
The whole Monday session of our workshop that I was describing when we were tap dancing was on the storyboard. The kids literally had the storyboard, and that's how they built the structure of their businesses. So we spent 6 hours storyboarding with the students in that last seminar. So that one, to Sangeeta's point, gets real functional, practical, tangible to the actual idea. Boy, this hour flew by, Mr. Collison.
It does go very fast, and we appreciate you guys that came out to join us live. Sangeeta highlighted we have 3 more of these that we're going to do, each lining up with the 4 keys that are in the book that are going to be available.
And I can wear the same thing next time, right?
You can, yeah. Okay. We couldn't see you the whole time, Todd. You were a Gallup symbol the whole time, and so, anyways, we appreciate you coming out live. Way more questions than I could answer, and of course, many of you that are listening have. Todd, if they got BP10 coaches that have questions still after
my email's been lighting up. So I do have a couple meetings, and it might be a while for those that have emailed me questions. I absolutely will get back to you, but I've seen way too many come across that I can answer immediately.
Yes. So be patient with us. Sangeeta, you highlighted what's coming up. Anything else you want to add to that as we think about the next 3 sessions that we're going to do? And I'll remind, as you're thinking of that, because I just asked that to you, if you want to get signed up for the other 3, go to gallup.eventbrite.com, and they're listed there. Sangeeta, what would be coming up to folks that can look forward to?
I think the next key that we have after someone has enough or gained enough self-awareness is actually recognizing opportunities. So how does a person identify what is it that he or she wants to build? And we will go through the process of recognizing opportunities next time.
Awesome. Well, those are coming up. Get signed up for them. If it's after May of 2018, they're probably already available for you. We've posted them on our coaches blog already, coaching.gallup.com, or you can find them on our BP10 site. Go to gallup.com/builder, and that will get you there as well. Remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources that we have available at the Gallup Strength Center, as well as our BP10 site. You can send us your questions or comments if you do have those and they haven't been answered yet. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Put BP10 in the subject line so that gets routed over to Todd, and they know how to get that done. And like I mentioned before, you can get a link to all our social resources, including the Call to Coach podcast. If you want to subscribe to that and get these on a regular basis, head over to coaching.gallup.com, check on the resources page. That is available for you. You can also join us on our Facebook group. We have a big Facebook group for all the coaches that are out there in general. You can go to facebook.com/groups/call2coach. That's for our coaches, including BP10. We have our own BP10 page as well. Facebook.com/group/BP10 will get you in there as well. We have 3 more of these. We'll look forward to the next Call to Coach.
Is there any coaches classes coming up in July, Jim?
You caught me off guard on that one, Todd. Are there?
Yes, there's there's a BP10 coaching. If you haven't been through, or if you want to audit it, we'll do a special deal for you. They're really exciting people that have already signed up. They're going to be the best ever, and it's both before and after the summit. We try to make it easy on the travel in and out of Omaha. Not that we are not an absolute destination.
Yeah, best actually pricing is at the summit, so you might want to consider that as well. That's coming up July 16th, 17th, and 18th, 2018 here in Omaha, Nebraska. Courses.gallup.com is the place to go for the special summit pricing. The easiest way to find that is Clifton Strength Summit, all one word. You might have to go back and play this again to write all this stuff down. CliftonStrengthSummit.com. Thanks for coming out today. We'll be back with another one here shortly. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.